Alright, and we back on the forecast. Now, from day one, we have been accepting and welcoming of everybody else, even when it's not reciprocated. And most times, it's to our own detriment. Almost every time. We even let outsiders into our personal business and let them settle disputes that's supposed to be settled amongst us. And we see the results that we get every single time. You end up with more situations like what's going on in Africa right now. China getting ready to call in those debts on Africa so they can start taking the land from Africans, which is doing nothing but changing European supremacy into Asian supremacy. Then you have people like Bill Gates, who should probably be charged with crimes against humanity. He's offering to pay off Nigeria's debt in exchange to be able to freely sterilize people, going back and forth from one slave master to another. We have to start learning ways to solve our own problem ourselves without relying on the outside force to come in. When you let outside forces regulate your affairs, you end up with situations like what happened to the brother Matthew Burroughs. This brother who was unarmed in Ohio who ended up getting killed by the police. So let's see what led this unarmed brother, Matthew Burroughs, to end up getting killed by Niles police.
Yeah, that was definitely gunshots, dude.
They shot him, dude.
What is he doing?
I don't know. They fucking shot him, though.
I am shaking. I'm so scared. Them gunshots scared me so bad.
Me too.
I told the girls, I'm like, get on the floor right now, because I didn't know who was shooting. Oh my God!
Dude, that's Mike's car, dude.
Oh my God! Is he dead?
Fuck no, he ain't dead, but he just fucked up Mike's car, bro.
Oh my God!
Details about the shooting in Niles. Police still on the scene. It was an officer-involved shooting, and right now we know one person is dead, not a police officer, but investigators still have lots of questions. Now, the incident started around 2:30 at Niles Municipal Court. It ended a short time later near the Royal Mall Apartments right off of Route 46.
Stan, I was talking to Captain John Marshall, and he gave me a brief timeline of exactly what happened today. He told me at around 2:30 the suspect entered Niles Municipal Court. We're not told why he was at court today, but he went and talked to a probation officer. He apparently had a warrant out for his arrest from charges dating back to December. Apparently they were assault charges. We're told that the probation officer recognized him, possibly saw that he recognized him from having a warrant out, and then attempted to detain him. At that point, the suspect started fleeing from the court. Apparently, when they were in the parking lot at some point while the officer was trying to detain him, the suspect almost hit this probation officer with his car. This is what dispatchers then did from that point on.
Dispatcher put out an alert for that vehicle, and officers went to the address that came back in order to try to locate the subject that had left the court. At some point, the subject met the officers there, and an incident occurred, and there was an officer-involved shooting at that point.
And again, from that point on is what Stan was saying. At some point, there was some sort of altercation, and the suspect was shot here at the Royal Mall Apartments. Now, again, the scene is still very active behind me. You can see the police are still here. They're looking into exactly what unfolded here. We are told that the officers who were involved in this shooting will be on administrative leave. That's part of the protocol, though. So as they're searching and looking into this, that's what's going to be happening as far as the department.
Now, the police have different stories about what happened, and it's conflicting and confusing. But this brother Matthew Burroughs had a meeting with his probation officer. And the police said as he was leaving, the probation officer recognized him and realized he had a warrant. But if he was supposed to be meeting with his probation officer, why is he talking about he recognized him? And then as he's leaving, all of a sudden he realizes he has a warrant. So then they said this probation officer tried to run and chase him down. And they said this brother who was already in his car started to back up. And they said as he backed up, he still had the car door open, which hit the probation officer. And then he took off. Now, as his brother Matthew Burroughs got to his house, they said cops were already waiting for him because of the warrant. And they said on the radio, it looked like he isn't going to stop. The police chief, Jay Holland, said this brother started driving his car towards the cops. And at that point, they perceived a threat. So they had no other choice but to open fire. And even though these cops say they fear for their lives, the video clearly shows the car was pointed in the other direction. On top of that, the bullet holes were in the back window. So they were shooting him from behind. And you have witnesses that say they saw this brother stop. But the witness said he was instructed not to talk to anybody. Even though they said he was driving towards the cops, all the evidence, including the way they had him boxed in, points to the car being stopped. Within 20 seconds of the cops saying they were approaching him, they were calling for medical help. Now, even though this warrant, which was for domestic abuse, had nothing to do with this, they still tried to use it to justify killing his brother.
The Bureau of Criminal Investigation reveals some new details about the officer-involved shooting in Niles and what happened. Good evening, I'm Dave Sess.
I'm Mandy Noel. Today, a spokesperson for the BCI revealed Matthew Burroughs did not have a gun in the car. The question now, did he use his vehicle as a weapon? 27 First News reporter Nadine Grimley has been talking to investigators. She's got our top story at 6.
The investigation continues tonight as to what exactly happened in the moments leading up to Wednesday's shooting at the Royal Mall Apartments that killed Matthew Burroughs.
Everything that we have relative to the case, we have handed over to BCI, and they are in the midst of their independent investigation of the event.
A BCI crime scene unit truck was parked outside the Niles Police Department Friday afternoon, where inside investigators with the Ohio Attorney General's office were conducting a search warrant on the vehicle Burroughs was driving. We're told agents finished collecting evidence from the vehicle this afternoon. A BCI spokesperson tells me they did not find a gun inside the car, but part of their investigation will be to determine whether or not the vehicle was used as a weapon. They'll continue to collect and analyze evidence in the case while awaiting autopsy and toxicology results. But a final report could take months.
It definitely could. A lot of it is dependent on interaction with the coroner's office and other factors of the investigation that could take some time.
Matthew's dead. He was shot 6 times, and he dead.
Right now, it's 6 tears and sadness tonight for the girlfriend of the man shot and killed by police in Niles. She tells us the man she knew had a huge heart. Tonight, friends and family are remembering 35-year-old Matthew Burroughs. They tell us he had been in trouble in the past, but was working toward a better path.
Police are still sorting out what happened yesterday before the shooting at the Royal Mall Apartments. 27 First News reporter Nadine Grimley is covering all the angles. She has tonight's top story.
As BCI continues their investigation into Wednesday's officer-involved shooting at the Royal Mall in Niles, the pregnant girlfriend of Matthew Burroughs, the man who was killed, is sharing her story.
He was a sweetheart.
About the man she loved.
I'm gonna miss his smile. He has a really nice, he used to just cheese at me.
Police say Burroughs was at Niles Municipal Court Wednesday when it was discovered he had an active warrant for assault and menacing charges. The warrant stemming from an argument between he and Elkins, where police were called to his apartment on December 17th.
911, where's your emergency?
Hey, it's this dude, man, there's a man waving his gun in my face.
He said he would have never harmed me. He would have never hurt me, and he would have never shot me or my son. And we got that cleared up.
Police say when the probation officer tried detaining Burroughs Wednesday, he took off hitting the PO with the door of the car as he drove away.
One of the road units did come across that suspect on the road, led them on a very short chase into the apartment complex, and at some point after that, the shooting occurred.
But he wasn't a violent man. They didn't have to kill him like that.
2 officers have been placed on paid administrative leave while the investigation is ongoing.
We will get to the bottom of what happened to Matthew. Period.
Now, this warrant came from an argument he and his girlfriend had. And let me say this, we have got to stop calling the police for domestic disputes. They aren't there to help any of us. And I understand there are going to be times where you're going to have to call somebody. But this is why it's important for us to create our own group that we can call when we need to. Not only to police the outsiders that come in our communities, but to also police ourselves. And we have had organizations like that. The Black Panthers were one example. We don't have to recreate the wheel. We can take our ancestors' blueprint, but we have to learn how to protect it. But they're trying to use this woman in this situation that has nothing to do with them killing an unarmed man to justify murdering him. And even though they say they're still supposed to be investigating, they got right on code and start caping for these cops.
2 Niles police officers on administrative leave after a deadly shooting have been identified. They are officers James Reppy and Christopher Mannella. The shooting happened January 2nd at the Royal Mall apartment complex. Investigators say Matthew Burroughs ran from officers when they tried to apprehend him on a warrant. Police say he tried to run them over with his vehicle, but the investigation continues into every aspect of the incident.
Today, Police Chief Jay Holland talked about what his officers faced when they encountered Matthew Burroughs. Here's 27 First News reporter Nadine Grimley.
A week after police shot and killed Matthew Burroughs at the Royal Mall apartment complex in Niles, Police Chief Jay Holland issued a statement.
We feel that some members of our community want to hear from their police department.
Holland spoke about some of what happened on January 2nd leading up to the shooting. He says the initial responding officers were on foot at the complex looking for Burroughs before he even pulled in with another cruiser behind him. Holland says Burroughs' vehicle then drove towards the officers.
Officers state they perceived a threat to their safety and fired their service weapons.
What would the effect on your body be if you were run over by a car? Very likely would be fatal.
Nearly 2 years ago, the Niles Police Department was certified by the Ohio Collaborative Community Police Advisory Board for their training and use of force policy.
Our policy states that if an officer reasonably observes a threat to his safety or his life, he may use deadly force to neutralize that threat to his life or safety.
Tom Conley with the Greater Warren Youngstown Urban League says he commends the police department for speaking out, but he's still waiting for BCI's report.
The bottom line is we have to wait for the BCI report to come out, because that report will fill in the gaps of what has happened.
Our thoughts are with our officers and with everybody involved in this. It's nothing, nobody wanted any of this to happen, but we have to react to situations we're put in.
Now, 2 of the cops that were involved, James Reppy and Christopher Mannella, got their paid vacation. And it turns out both of these cops got a history of their own. This is the second shooting Officer Christopher Mannella been involved in. And of course, he was cleared of that one too. The cop James Reppy had domestic cases of his own. His girlfriend accused him of abuse. He filed an order of protection against him. But of course, they justified him and cleared him of all charges too, because they stay on code. And the dominant society isn't going to let an outsider come in and tell them what to do. They're not going to let China or North Korea punish American citizens. And we shouldn't let outsiders come in and punish us. At the end of the day, we are all we got. And until we get on code and do what we got to do and learn how to protect ourselves, outsiders are going to keep trying to come in. And we're going to keep getting the same results.
Police officer who shot and killed 12-year-old Tamir Rice is fighting again to get his job back.
That's right. Timothy Lohman was not charged in Rice's death 4 years ago, but was fired for lying on his job application. The police union now is appealing his firing, and Channel 3's Ray Strickland has more on Lohman's fight and what the family of Tamir Rice is saying about it all.
This is not the first time Timothy Lohman has made an attempt to rejoin the Cleveland police. In 2017, he was fired, not for shooting Tamir Rice, but for what the city says was a failure to be fully candid when he applied to join the force. Last year, he tried to get his job back, but lost. A ruling cited an investigation in his time as an Independence police officer. It was discovered that the department there wanted him gone too. The deputy chief said he lacked maturity, couldn't handle stress, and that he lied to his supervisors. The city says Lohman never mentioned those things when he applied to be an officer in Cleveland.
And this all comes back to the use of force, which has nothing to do with this arbitration whatsoever.
In 2014, Lohman made national headlines when he shot and killed 12-year-old Tamir Rice outside of a Cleveland rec center. Rice had a fake gun. Lohman shot within 2 seconds. He was never charged. In a new appeal filed Friday in Cuyahoga County Court, the union not only wants Lohman to return to work, but they want him to get back pay and lost benefits. Jeff Farmer, a spokesperson for the union, says he's been treated unfairly, and he hopes the judge will go on the merits of fact and not political pressure. Tamir's mother, Samaria Rice, has been vocal about the case and Lohman since her son's death. The family's attorney had this to say about Lohman's latest attempt to return to the Cleveland Police Department.
Until the CPPA comprehends its officers are not above the law, none of us are safe. And Tamir, he never stood a chance when there's a police culture like that.
We reached out to the mayor's office to get a comment on this, but a spokesperson responded saying the city does not discuss ongoing litigation.
Restaurant at the center of controversy after allegations of racial profiling. Thanks for joining us. I'm Sandy Miller.
And I'm John Brown. A group of African-American professionals claimed that they were embarrassed when police officers arrived after the group was accused of not wanting to pay their bill. Fox News' Kelly Hoskins joins us live in Richmond Heights with more on the accusations tonight. Kelly.
Well, the incident allegedly happened here at the Blue Sky Grill on South Brentwood Boulevard. We're told that a group of 30 African-American professionals were here to celebrate their friend's birthday when they were kicked out of their birthday celebration before it was set to end.
I mean, if it made us feel like a criminal. It made us feel like that we was breaking the law, and we wasn't.
30-year-old Terrence Dickerson is a chef, a recording artist, and a father of 2. Dickerson says on Saturday he made reservations for 30 of his closest friends and family members to attend his birthday dinner and celebration. The party was held at the Blue Sky Grill in Richmond Heights, and Terrence says what was supposed to be a night of joy and celebration turned into a night of humiliation and turmoil.
People that wanted to go in there and get served and have a good time, a birthday celebration, and you know, they didn't treat us like that. They treated us like, you know, we didn't supposed to be there.
About 8:20 p.m. we got a call for a possible disturbance involving 30 people at the Blue Sky Grill. So we had a number of officers, 7, 8 officers or so, go out there. Quickly found out that there wasn't a disturbance. There was just misunderstanding and disagreement over how the group was going to be billed, whether it be one check or individual checks. And shortly after we arrived, apparently the restaurant came to understanding with the group.
This is video captured from the birthday party that has been shared on social media numerous times. Dickerson says he signed a contract with Blue Sky reserving a party space. He showed us this email that states that everyone could do separate checks for their own food and drink, and that they would be charged 20% of all checks on gratuity. Dickerson says the night of the party, things changed quickly. He claims the waitress refused to serve them because she felt overwhelmed due to the large party.
So she left, and we didn't see her anymore. So everybody was wondering, like, where this at, where that at, where my condiments at, where this at. And she left and never came back. And then the next message we getting is the police want y'all to leave.
Halton Nelson attended the dinner party that night and left embarrassed.
I looked out the other door, and there were like 6 or 7 more cops, and it was like 8 total. And I asked the cops and said, you know, is there any laws being broken or anything? Or, you know, is there any like legitimate reason you guys should be here? He said, well, you know, we were just called, you know, about a group of 30 didn't want to pay. And I said, well, that's not true. We never said that at all. As a matter of fact, we were still trying to get our food.
Dickerson friends and family believe the restaurant feared the group would not pay their bill because they were African American. They were then forced to pay their bills in a single file line, then forced to leave. Our news crews headed to Blue Sky Grill to get some answers. When we arrived, we were greeted by a security guard and asked to leave. We asked for a statement from the owner, and we were told they did not have a comment, but is fully aware of the incident, leaving Terrence and his party with more questions than answers.
Very embarrassing. The police told everybody that we had to go upstairs because it was a bad look on the establishment. But like I told him, you know, the fact that we have a black party of, you know, 30, which we all, you know, contracted to be up here, you know, it looks bad because you have 8 police officers out here, you know, and no laws being broken.
Dickerson is now calling for an apology from Blue Sky Grill.
I would like for them to reach out to me and just apologize for the service and apologize for, you know, her just leaving us up there without even communicating with us.
Hey, you guys are making me hungry.
After we were asked to leave the Blue Sky Grill this afternoon, we wanted to give management another opportunity to respond. So we called right before the story aired, and we were told once again they were not available for comment.
Parents are demanding action after a group of Bel Air High School students are seen in a controversial photo.
Yeah, this photo shows the teens using the letters that are on their shirts. They stand together. The letters spell out a racial slur. ABC2's Chanel Pearman is live this morning for us in Bel Air. Chanel, what do parents want to happen to the students involved in this?
Christian parents are outraged, and now they're calling on the school district to take action. More than 16,000 people have signed an online petition calling for those students involved to be expelled. Last week, students at Bel Air High School were encouraged to wear a letter on their shirt and then come together with other students to spell words. Now, this was all part of the school spirit week. Now, students can be seen in this photo spelling out the N-word. In a statement, Harford County Schools says the use of racial slurs or any discriminatory comments is not acceptable. The school system could not confirm how the students were punished, but did say the 6 students in the photo and the student who took it were disciplined. Now, many parents want more to be done.
I think that there should be zero tolerance for something like this. Send a strong message to not just to them, but to anybody else that thinks that this is okay.
Ashley and Christian, parents behind the petition, believe that a zero-tolerance policy will help make sure that no child will be harassed or degraded for the color of their skin, religion, or sexual orientation.
Hoover Mayor Frank Burroughs is speaking out about race relations after an alleged incident involving a teacher using racial dialogue at Spain Park.
Yeah, this comes after high school students were filmed using racial slurs over the weekend. CBS 42 News reporter Corey McGinnis joins us now. He's live in Hoover. Corey, school leaders there are now investigating both these incidents.
Yeah, Sherry, good evening. They are. It's actually under investigation by the school system, but we also got a chance to actually speak with the mayor of Hoover, who tells me that the city is addressing the controversy.
We're working very hard to address the issues that have been brought up.
Hoover Mayor Frank Burroughs says he plans to have a conversation about race after Hoover City Schools is now investigating an alleged incident of a teacher using the N-word when talking with students at the school.
We have already been in dialogue with many, many different organizations. We've talked with many different people from people of faith, people of different organizations that address issues with race relations.
Hoover City Schools Public Relations Coordinator Jason Gaston released a statement saying, in part, there were concerns brought to school authorities and the matter is under investigation by the school system. Tuesday was supposed to be a day of dialogue at Spain Park High. The school is dealing with the fallout of a video that surfaced last weekend showing a group of white Spain Park and Hoover High School students talking about the Holocaust, Jewish people, and African Americans using the N-word multiple times. Meanwhile, Mayor Burroughs has a message for the teens involved in the video.
You have got to engage yourself with people that don't look like you and try to understand their perspective and let them have an opportunity to hear your perspective as well.
This morning, Superintendent Kathy Murphy met with the teacher and Hoover High School principal to talk about what happened. Last night, Dr. Murphy told WVTM 13 the teacher had admitted to using the N-word and had apologized. But Murphy has not decided what, if any, action to take, so the teacher remains on paid leave out of the classroom. The incident happened last Friday during a third period food and nutrition class at Hoover High School. As students were working on a project, they were playing music, a song by Tupac called Dear Mama. We sat down today with Diamond Levy and her mom. Diamond is the student who played that song on her phone in class, and she says the teacher used the N-word to tell her to turn the music off.
I was singing at the time. I was singing, and when she said it, she was like, turn that N song off.
It's a slur at this point. Like, it's not just a word. It's not just a term. It's a racial slur that causes pain. It stings when it's said.
I would request your approval of the personnel report, which is the resignation of Teddy Butcher.
Superintendent Kathy Murphy spent the last several days investigating exactly what happened, talking to students, their families, and the teacher who used the N-word in the classroom last Friday.
The word was said. It was inappropriate. We addressed it with swiftness. I know that it comes as a disappointment to our students and to our community, and for that, you know, there is no excuse. We don't tolerate that.
Teddy Butcher, a teacher in the Hoover school system for 11 years, deciding to resign.
She made the very best choice for herself, And at the end of the day, I think she made the best decision for all.
Butcher admitted using the racial slur and apologized. She was on paid leave during the investigation. But this man, who identifies himself as a Hoover parent, is upset the teacher wasn't fired immediately.
It don't matter the context. She already admitted that she said it. She should have been fired like that. There ain't no investigation.
But Murphy says due process is important.
There's been no attempt on the part of the school district, certainly not on the part of the superintendent, to sweep anything on the rug. I think you all have seen me address all matters head on, whatever the issue might be.
Butcher's resignation effective immediately. The superintendent says she hopes to take what she calls a negative and harmful event and make the best out of it. For one, she's inviting students to be part of a superintendent's advisory council to keep the conversation going and try to prevent anything like this from happening again.
The famous kissing sailor image after the war, Alfred Eisenstadt's photograph of VJ Day. When the war came to an end, George Mendonça, the sailor captured in the image, thought it was an important memento of the war.
The picture is still known around the whole world as a symbol of the end of World War II. This is one of the good things that ever happened to me.
Mendoza died this week, God bless him. In the wake of his death, a statue capturing that moment was defaced with the words #MeToo. The implication being that the nurse in the picture did not consent to be kissed. This is related to an internet sensation. Trolls dug up a 1971 Playboy interview with John Wayne, the acting legend. In the interview, he refers to gays using a pejorative, says Indians were selfishly trying to keep this land, and he's glad we took it from them. And then he says this: with a lot of blacks, there's quite a bit of resentment along with their dissent, and possibly rightfully so. But we can't all of a sudden get down on our knees and turn everything over to the leadership of the blacks. I believe in white supremacy, Duke said, until the blacks are educated to the point of responsibility. Now, Laura, what I don't like about both of these stories is we're judging the past in light of shifting moral, ethic, and cultural codes of today. We can't do that.
Well, they're either defacing statues or pulling them down.
Yeah.
So and I've said this before, I'm going to keep saying this. This is what the Taliban does. The Taliban used to rip down historical markers, destroy churches. ISIS did the same thing, does the same thing. They don't want any vestige of what was.
Well,
even if it's bad, they don't want any vestige. Even if it's good, they don't want anything.
But these are two iconic images of America.
Right.
John Wayne and the sailor, the release, freedom. They're impugning America. They're impugning America. And if you want to settle a racist score, if you want to go settle scores, talk to Jesse Smollett. Go talk to the governor and Lieutenant Governor of Virginia. They got plenty of scores to settle there. Deal with the living, not the dead. We can't go back to a man who's been dead for 40 years and an interview 50 years old. It's just, he was born in 1907, by the way.
Yeah, but by the way, that interview has been out there for 40, 50 years.
At least.
Joining me now to respond is Ethan Wayne, who's not only John Wayne's son, also president of the John Wayne Enterprises and director of the John Wayne Cancer Foundation. Ethan, this is some real tough stuff. I don't know that you're going to try to defend the words, but let's at least let folks see what they were. Relative to gays, can we start with that? Your father quoted in Playboy magazine, if we can put that on the screen, as saying the following: Americans will be completely fed up with these perverted films. He's then asked, well, what do you consider perverted? He talks about Midnight Cowboy, a story about two fags, and thinks that qualifies. Relatives to blacks, people of color, but we can't all of a sudden get down on our knees and turn everything over to the leadership of the blacks. I believe in white supremacy until the blacks are educated to a point of responsibility. And then with regard to Native Americans, one more of these: I don't feel we did wrong in taking this great country away from them, if that's what you're asking. Our so-called stealing of this country from them was just a matter of survival. There were great numbers of people who needed new land, and the Indians were selfishly trying to keep it for themselves. And I did read the full interview because I didn't want to take anything out of context. Respond to that.
Well, thank you for having me on and letting me respond. I think you do have to go to the context of that entire interview. This is an interview that took place over 2 days, and I believe the transcript was about 8 hours long. It was a pretty contentious discussion over politics and the film industry. So if we want to, let's start. I think he started with the gay term. He used the word. He used a terrible word, no doubt about it. But he used it not in the context of an individual's sexuality. He used it in the context of the changing landscape of the motion picture business, something that distressed him. You know, my father worked in Hollywood for 50 years, and Hollywood is probably, you know, one of the most progressive and diverse communities on earth. He didn't care what race, gender, sexual orientation you were. He cared how well you did your job. He took everyone at face value. So the second place you went, I think, was the Native American question.
Okay, do that one.
Okay. So my father made a mistake that some people make in interviews by repeating the language that the interviewer used. So that's where the term white supremacy came out. In fact, we dug through our archives and we found notes that my father wrote to people at the time who were concerned about his use of that term, and he explained that it was a mistake on his part. He repeated the interviewer's language. He should have said supremacy of responsible people. If you'll read the entire interview, you'll see that they were discussing a group that he believed was trying to use violence to gain power, and my father would never approve of that. He believed in the democratic system. So lastly, I think he went to the American Indians, Native Americans, and I don't think anybody had a closer relationship to the Native Americans than John Wayne. He's being asked pointedly political questions about an issue that we've dealt with for a century and a half before my father gave the interview, and we're still dealing with it today. You know, it's a complex question. My father had a great personal respect for Native Americans. He worked with them, you know, for half his career. When John Wayne and a film crew would come to Monument Valley or to a reservation, it was an economic boon for that tribe and those people. They appreciated him, and I think anyone who knew him would remember him fondly. He had a great respect for them as a people and for their art and culture.